God is hidden. And the sages say that God is hidden in the simple. God is hiding in simplicity, in logic, really. So beware. Look out for the logic. And there you may find the Holy One. Pioneers of human flight argued that if we only got more human beings into the air, and you could see what the early pioneers of flight were privileged to see, you would see that from up in a hot air balloon, there are no lines or borders. There's no division. And they argued that, it's all one contiguous earth. So they said to themselves, why would we fight over borders when everyone is privileged to this kind of view? They said, if we can only get everyone up in seats, sitting in a plane, if everyone could have this view, then war would be obsolete. It's only logical. It's so simple. Unfortunately, this idea of peace by the pioneers of human flight was wrapped in logic. Logic is often overlooked. Such a simple idea, it's almost too simple. And look, I don't want to get political. It's not my nature. But I have to say that I'm not proud this week what happened in Paris. And after we walked out on the climate accord, and I say we as a country, I understand more and more what the great Norwegian author meant when he wrote progress is man's ability to complicate simplicity.
That's true.
This is no reflection on any particular branch of government. You can take from it what you will. I speak of us as a country. And it got me thinking about something we learned just a week ago. We were talking about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. How many of you have read that wonderful, crazy, holy spoof of a book? So, in this book, they talk about the babblefish. Can I read you a little portion?
Please.
Thank you. So, the babblefish is small, yellow, leech-like, and probably the oddest thing in the universe. And it feeds on brainwave energy, absorbing all the unconscious frequencies, and then excreting telepathically a matrix formed from the conscious frequencies, and nerve signals pick up from speech centers of the brain. The practical upshot of which is that if you stick a babblefish in your ear, you can instantly understand anything said to you in any language, or any form of speech. It's a speech that is decoded by the babblefish. Now this was, back when this was written, science fiction. Today, you can actually purchase a device that you can put into your ear and it translates. I mean, now you have a phone, you can just punch it in, but that's too much work. So now you just stick it in your ear, and like the babblefish, anything it said to you, mamish, am I too loud? Oh, okay. All right. So something like this, according to the author of this book, should effectively remove all barriers to communication, all barriers to peace. I mean, once we can understand each other, of course there'll be peace. It's only logical. Something beautiful, a technological wonder, wrapped in logic. The author wrote back then that the babblefish has caused more and bloodier wars than anything else in the history of creation. Why do you think that is? Because sometimes we're prevented from seeing the obvious because of all the other things that we see or think we see. You might think that the logical path is the path most traveled, but that wouldn't be accurate. We don't always heed logic. We don't always abide by reason. And it's important to recognize this as a human frailty. It's not a frailty of one politician. It's a human frailty. It belongs to all of us. Our leaders are representative of who we are as a people. Collectively. And this is interesting because there's so much remedial benefit in the world. And it's available to us, and it's wrapped in logic. It's wrapped in simplicity. And this week's Torah portion captures this idea. It reads, Vaydaber Shalom Moshe. It actually begins at the end of last week's portion. I'll read it to you in English. It says, God says to Moshe and Aaron, Moses our prophet and Aaron the priest, the head priest, high priest. This is what you have to do. When you approach the most sacred objects, and the Torah is referring to the vessels of the holy Mishkan, of the tabernacle. You know, the utensils used by the priest for their duties. It says, when you approach the sacred objects, that Aaron and his sons must always go in, that you shouldn't see them, it says. It says, Lo yavo lirot. You shouldn't come to see them. Now Rashi explains this to mean that Aaron and his sons would go into the sanctuary and cover all of these articles of ritual. And whenever the families or the clans that were carrying them through the desert would come, they wouldn't touch the actual article itself. They would touch the covering and hold the covering and carry the covering because the covering wrapped the article. So they wouldn't actually see, no one but the priests would see these holy utensils of divine worship, these vessels. So the carriers didn't see what they were holding in front of them. They held these valuable sacred items, and they didn't see what they were. And this is a metaphor. It's a metaphor, well, for the present moment, that we are holding great technological, philosophical, social advancements. We live in the free world. We have a responsibility as free people living in a democracy, that if only we could adhere to a simple logic, that we would have a greater common good. And it reminds us of a story told by the Baal Shem Tov. It comes through the Degamach and Ephraim, and it speaks of, I'll read it to you, it's very sweet, the way he writes it. This is the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. He says, something I heard from my grandfather, that a student comes to their Rebbe, to their teacher, in order to learn from them. But just at that moment, the teacher may be in a state of katnut, that the leader or the Rebbe may be not at his best, right? How many of you, seen that your teacher or someone you respect, and they're low blood sugar, or they're, they're impatient, they're just not at their best. The Baal Shem Tov said that the student should be careful of how they look at the teacher at that point. Lo yavo lirot. They shouldn't come to see. What shouldn't they come to see? They shouldn't come to see something that might sway them. So this is the story. It goes that a student came and found the famous Reb Nachman drinking coffee. It could have been anything he was drinking, but it was coffee, as presumed by the text, while he was praying and has to fill in his phylacteries and his prayer shawl. And this is like a big thing, you know, that they saw the Rebbe drinking coffee at the same time that he's praying. So the student comes in to see this and says to himself, oh my gosh, this must be the Rebbe's custom to drink coffee or to drink hot liquids or to drink while he davens, while he prays. So he goes back to his class, to his students, and he says, listen, make the coffee, because now we're going to drink coffee while we wrap our tefillin, while we pray, because that's how the Rebbe does it, right? But little did he know that he just caught the Rebbe on a day that he had a sore throat, right? And needed a little something to make sure that he could pray without interrupting himself by coughing. It's a simple story, but a great idea, in that if only the student had exercised logic, but what he saw was covered in logic. It was a ritual, a mitzvah, something beautiful, the Rebbe davening, the Rebbe praying, wrapped in logic. Sometimes it's covered. And if you don't see the logic, we miss the mitzvah, we miss the beauty, we miss that something special. It's interesting that dogma, religious dogma, should always accommodate logic. I'm just going to go off on a tangent for like 2 seconds. Sam Harris, this is the second time I quoted him in 3 weeks. Please don't read his book. He wrote that religion, untested and unreasoned, can lead to extremism. It can be very dangerous. And that one statement was quite inspiring to me. He's a pure, outright atheist, right? So as a rabbi, I can't recommend his literature to you. But I read it because I was very curious. And curious minds should follow their, well, logic. And he's saying that logic is a good litmus test for the spiritual path. It lets you know when you're on the right path. And as Jews, we also have sort of a practical barometer for religiosity. Our sages say that any spiritual path that leads you away from love of humankind is not a spiritual path that you should be following. That's logic. That's logic. Not dogma, not deep spiritual principle, logic. If your spirituality leads you away from love of humankind, and so the idea of covered vessels in the Torah this week is that religious practice is a metaphor, that it's necessary to wrap it in logic, and that is Torah. It's good Torah. To wrap this stuff in logic. And decisions made as a community and as a people should also be wrapped in logic. People who worked on the early atom splitting machines, they dreamed of harnessing the power of the atom. And it seems only logical that if we learn how to split the atom and harness the mass of energy, that it will be released by fission, then electricity would be extremely affordable. Extremely affordable. And so it wouldn't be worth monitoring or charging customers for. Governments would give electricity away for free to all citizens. This is what the pioneers of the atom splitting machines were thinking. It's only logical. With unlimited power for all, we can heat our homes, manufacture goods, farm, other uses. There would be so much abundance of energy in the world, people wouldn't go to war. War would become obsolete.
Nice.
Nuclear fission would make war obsolete. It was only logical. Something wondrous wrapped in logic. Unfortunately, logic, that particular logic, unsubstantiated. We're on our way to Israel. And Israel is perhaps the most tragic example of Zionist efforts to coexist, largely unrealized. Early Zionists believed that if they only got themselves together and settled in Palestine at the time, right, they would usher in a utopia so glorious that they would bring the best of Western civilization to the underdeveloped land. And that they would be welcomed by the Arabs with open arms. It's only logical that together the Zionist pioneers and the Arabs, by generously pooling, and this I'm reading this. This is something that I read by the great modern Kabbalist Tessler. He writes this, that by pulling together our resources, they thought they would build a paradise, peaceful, cooperative, rich, and progressive. It would become a beacon to the world, fulfilling the prophecies of international coexistence, beating swords into plowshares. The whole world would see how possible it is to build paradise on earth. Violent disputes over culture, religion, ancient grievances wouldn't make sense anymore. War would become obsolete. It's only logical. Middle East peace wrapped in logic. Unfortunately, the logical path is not always the prevailing path. And so in ending, why am I telling you this? Because many of us, in our own lives, face conflicts, quandaries, both personal, professional, that with simple reasoning and logic, solutions are just steps away. That's what it means to step back when we pray. Why do we step back when we pray? To observe what's wrapped in simplicity, in logic. Friends, the spiritual path is not a complex path. Some of the sweetest, holiest, most deeply righteous and pious people are simple people. Those are my friends. Those are our friends. That is us. Why? Because we bless each other. And so I want to bless you with a week, with a year, with a lifetime of discovering remedies that are simple, logical, effective, and divine. Take 3 steps back. Let me know what you see. Good Shabbos.